Good evening and welcome to 365 Days of Amazing Stories, Day 4, January 4th of 2024. And I'm going to touch on something that you might want to think about uh, for all those who drive cars, or even maybe if you don't, but you think about it. What is it better to do? Have an old car and fix it when it breaks, or try to buy a new car and drive it while the warranty is good and you don't have to worry about all that stuff? What's more environmentally friendly? What's more effective? What's better for your mental health? Well, I drive some older vehicles, especially one truck in particular, which I use to do a lot of work. It's a 1989 Ford diesel F-250. It has a 7.3 liter diesel engine in it that's made by International. It's considered a 1 million mile engine. In other words, it can go a long time. It was owned originally by Barclay Henry, who lived in Big Sur a very long time. And it was their ranch truck. And it ended up being passed on, and I think for a sum of money, to a friend, Ben Cicluna, who ended up having it for a while, sold it to a friend, and didn't get paid for it completely, and his friend left it on the side of the road. And the clutch was bad, the batteries were bad, and the starter was bad, so it was difficult to drive the thing or even move it. Anyway, I helped Ben transport the thing up the hill and then drove him back down to his truck, and he asked me if I wanted it. He'd give it to me, but it was a project car. I didn't want it at first. I drove by it for a week, and finally I thought, that's maybe worth it. Part of what made it worth it is it's a 4x4, so four-wheel drive truck, and it has a dump bed on it. And I thought, wow, this would be pretty valuable, especially for running firewood loads into people. That was 2009. Here it is, 2024, 15 years later, and I have kept this thing running. Now, granted, I put probably $1,500 to $2,000 into it every year. So over the course of 15 years, let's just say I've put $30,000 into that truck. What would a new one cost? Well, something like that, a diesel 4x4 with a dump bed, would be at this point at least $100,000. The dump bed and the flatbed that is the dump bed is custom, so it costs a lot of money to fabricate such a thing. Now today, I spent the day with a good friend who is a mechanic working on my truck. Front wheel bearings, front rotors, which are the round things that turn around that the brake pads clamp onto to stop the truck. Tomorrow we're working on rear wheel bearings, drums and brakes. It's a lot of work. But in the end, the truck will be good for hopefully quite a bit longer. Earlier this year, we had to replace the steering box on the truck. I think that's basically it this year. But I'm going to have probably close to $3,000 into the truck this year. And like I said, I deliver a lot of loads of firewood with it. So sometimes it does make sense to keep an old car running. I think especially if it's a diesel. Greg seems to be of the opinion that it is much better for the environment to repair older vehicles, as the cost of fabricating an entire car to the environment it's quite costly to the environment. Yes, cars cost whatever they cost. Now, supposedly, according to what I've researched, cars that are older than, I think it's 2004, tend to have worse emissions than newer cars. So that's a consideration as well. If cars aren't running as efficiently, they're polluting the environment more. And that especially goes for really old cars. If you've ever driven behind a classic vehicle, they're pretty stinky. So anyway, something to consider. It is really nice to get a new car and have that vehicle be under warranty for 50,000 or 100,000 miles, and to not really have anything that you have to do to it, or at least any money that you have to put into it. However, if you've ever bought a new car, the registration, at least in California, for each year is horrendous. A new Tesla, it's about $1,000 the first year to register that car in the state. It seems like they ought to give you a credit for such a thing, but no, heavy-duty registration fees. And the same holds true with any high-priced vehicle that you might buy. Registration is quite high. On top of that, insurance tends to be equally as high compared to older cars. So again, something to consider. You know, you may have the ability to purchase a new car, but then do you have the ability to pay for registration and insurance on top of it, or monthly payment? So all these are things to consider. But I think the most important thing to consider is not your pocketbook, but the effect on the environment. What is the long-term effect? What is the big effect on the environment to harvest all these materials that we then turn into the vehicles that we run around in? You know, the batteries that it takes to run electric vehicles. It's an incredible cost to the environment to harvest a lot of the elements that are used in the manufacturing of those batteries. Hopefully we'll get it better as time goes on, and also learn to recycle the old batteries and use them again. All right, keep investigating on your own how best to serve yourself and the environment at the same time. Okay, that's all for today. I am going to include another video of my old Ford and my friend working on it.